Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to the CEC15 January Business Meeting Part 2. I am Camille Casaretti. I'm the president of CEC15, and I am going to call this meeting to order at 6:40 p.m. I will start the roll call. Councilmember Antonia Ferraro.
Sorry, present. I was muted.
Okay, Councilmember Thea Shellstead is not here yet. Councilmember Vincent Liu is not here yet. Councilmember Nana Poku Abiakum
Okay, present.
is here, and Councilmember Alfred De Ingenis is not here. If Alfred does not come this evening, that's going to be his sixth absence. So I'm not sure what's happening there. Councilmember Joseph Alexander.
Present.
Welcome. Councilmember Yvonne Banja.
Present. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Nancy Randall, I believe is coming, but not here yet. And our student member, Jared Moser.
Present.
Welcome, Jared. And present. So, okay. So we do not have quorum yet. We're still waiting for one more person to arrive, but we're going to just move into the updates, and I will do that very quickly. So we're coming together tonight for the second part of our January business meeting, and we needed to have two parts because we had a lengthy discussion our last meeting about the School Construction Authority capital plan requests that we made for all of our liaison schools. And since then, those have been submitted to the School Construction Authority. They have also been sorted and distributed by Reso A requests, and all of those have been sent to City Council, to each individual elected official. Regarding the DSF, Division of School Facilities projects, please reach out to your individual liaison schools because the principal needs to direct those requests to the Division of School Facilities. So we could help the process along by writing to Carmine and copying the principal and just sort of a quick email. The following items have been proposed by the principal to have repairs, and please connect their copy here on this email, something like that. So please follow up on that because the DSF requests were even longer than the SCA requests. So Nancy, I saw you jumped on, so thank you so much for being here. We now have quorum. And so for those of you who have not heard, Governor Hochul did extend the open meetings law through the state of disaster emergency. So we don't have an end date right now. And we are still going to be advocating to have the open meetings law amended permanently to include virtual meetings because this has obviously been successful for many, many councils all over the city. I saw Tia jump on the call. We are now 7, so welcome, Tia. Just a couple of notes. So regarding the attendance sheets, please fill out your IPRs as soon as possible. This is part of our mandated duty as CEC members, and it's written into the state law. So I will share the links again tomorrow so that you can fill out whatever is missing. Sorry. Workshop update. So I only just sent out one registration link so far, and we have 87 people signed up for our sewing class. Unfortunately, we only have 20 spots. So we're going to have a long wait list and I've already spoken to the vendor about organizing a second session, and she's interested. So that's really exciting. And I'll be sending out 2 more links later in the week for 2 additional other workshops. I had a meeting with Executive Superintendent Watts last week and asked her specifically about I'm so sorry, what we're going to be doing about securing more teachers, especially teachers that have special ed certification, and that hiring process is just taking far too long. And we're experiencing this with hiring of our own administrative assistant because we lost another candidate. And so we're going to be starting over again. I also discussed with ES Watts the COVID map on the DOE website that is still not updated. Now, the New York State website has information on each school, and it's a lot more than what DOE was showing. It says how many tests were done at each school in any given week. So that's pretty interesting. I would ask that you look up your own school just to at least compare what messaging you're getting from your own school, and then you share this link with the PAs and PTAs. I also discussed with ES Watts the students that are in quarantine and how they are not being allowed to come back to school for a full 10 days, even if they test negative after 5 days. And it was really clear that like 10 days of, sort of no instruction is completely unacceptable, especially at the middle school level where a child might miss 60 lessons for the week. And they're really just not communicating enough with the teachers during those periods. There's also this other part of it that some children have been in quarantine more than one time. So if you are a child that has been quarantined 3 times, you now missed an entire month of school. So parents were advocating for an attendance code to track students who are absent due to COVID. So that is going to start happening starting this week. And we've been getting mixed messages from the Chancellor and Mayor about a remote option. So last week at the Chancellor's Parent Advisory Committee meeting, Chancellor Banks said he was interested in a remote option and would implement it if there was a way to do that. And the mayor is adamant about keeping schools open. So the bottom line is, like, we need more COVID testing, basically on a weekly basis. And a lot of parents have not given consent for COVID testing. So we know, the parents know that they have to sign up for consent every school year. It starts like late September. So it's not like the first thing that you do when you come back to school. And I think that a lot of people just missed the message that they were supposed to sign up again for consent. So that's in the NICSA account. And until recently, only unvaccinated students were being tested. That's not the case anymore. So please tell your liaison schools and PAs and PTAs to continue spreading the word for families to sign these COVID consent forms. In other news, the Chancellor is having a meeting with all of the superintendents and executive superintendents throughout the city this Thursday. I'm sure Superintendent Scott will give us an update at the calendar meeting that is on Tuesday, January 25th. We have a new organizational chart that we can share. Antonia, do you think you can drop that in the chat? So this is going to be the new organizational chart for David Banks's team coming in. So learn those names. I'm going to spend some time memorizing that list myself. Okay, so as I was saying, our calendar meeting is on Tuesday next week, and we are inviting some of the legislators from Sunset Park to come to introduce themselves. We met Lincoln Ressler last week, and Shahana Hanif has come, and so hopefully a bunch of them will be able to come. We're inviting basically everybody from Sunset Park, the Senate, Assembly, and City Council. And okay, let me see what else is here on my list. Okay, so at the end of our calendar meeting next week, we are going to just save like an hour to do a town hall on remote learning, since the Chancellor is asking for feedback on what learning instruction looks like, positive learning instruction, and curriculums that were really useful and productive. So it would be great to be able to send him a list of all of the positive things that we saw as parents around the learning and instruction aspect of remote learning. And okay, so that's all I have. Does any of the council members have anything they want to share before we get into the depth of this meeting? Okay, I'm going to go with no. And all right, Antonia, why don't you take the next part with the review of the letter to Chancellor?
Okay, so yes, I have a draft of a welcome letter to Chancellor Banks. We usually have a Chancellor's Town Hall. We're not sure when that will happen, but we wanted to sort of give him a little flavor of District 15 and what some of our concerns might be. So I will just read that letter. Dear Chancellor Banks, Happy New Year. Welcome to your new role as Chancellor of the New York City Department of Education. We hope to have the opportunity to meet with you in person, pandemic permitting, in District 15, Brooklyn. As such a date may be far off, the Community Education Council of District 15 sends this letter to introduce you to our district and share some issues we prioritize. CEC15 might best be defined as a body of empowered parents. We come from all corners of a district that encompasses the neighborhoods of Sunset Park, Park Slope, Kensington, Windsor Terrace, Red Hook, Gowanus, Carroll Gardens, Cobble Hill, and Borum Hill. Our professional backgrounds are as diverse as our personal backgrounds. We work in fields ranging from social work to film, teaching to interior design. We have members who attended New York City public schools or have family members who are New York City public school teachers, while others come from different parts of the country and the world. Whatever our backgrounds, we are all invested in District 15 children. That investment in public education is our bond across neighborhoods, as education is one of the few resources powerful enough to foster community. Public education policies can be designed to build bonds as well as individual achievement if we choose to design them with community as a goal. Too often, though, education policy prioritizes the kind of competition that reinforces class stratification. We want to end that. CEC15 believes that diversity, equity, and inclusion should be at the forefront of planning throughout the city. Under the leadership and in collaboration with Superintendent Scott, District 15 championed work in school desegregation through unprecedented community engagement processes, such as the D15 Diversity Plan and participatory action research employed in a recent rezoning of our elementary schools. D15 schools also strive to forge curricula inclusive of all students and their identities while ensuring academic and social emotional needs are met. We were excited to hear you reference our work to unscreen middle schools through the D15 diversity plan as a model for the city. We are honored to participate in this citywide effort. Like most councils, ours does not always agree on everything, but CEC15 works to maintain a council that is an open forum for an informed, civil, and respectful discussion on a myriad of education issues such as citywide pediatric vaccination rates are woefully low and many parents have not consented to testing. We are currently exploring ways that the DOE could address vaccine and testing mandates for students. Enrollment declines in D15 and citywide have been accelerated by the pandemic. We are discussing how reduced enrollment will impact our schools beyond 2020. We would like the DOE to ensure all of our students benefit from school-wide enrichment. We are looking at ways that high-stakes testing enable citywide segregation and tracking. We wonder why no excuses charter schools do not follow state disciplinary laws. We would like to see police-trained safety agents and schools forge a partnership that serves the whole child. Given the tremendous backlog of Carter cases, we wonder how students with learning disabilities like dyslexia can be appropriately served within DOE schools. We are curious as to whether a remote learning option could ever provide an equivalent education. And like you, we seek to improve the ways in which our public schools can effectively promote all the outstanding work they do every day. Chancellor Banks, we invite you to join us in these discussions. You know our city, you know our schools, you know our children. You know there are no shortcuts to providing quality education, and it is possible to do innovative things within the traditional public system. Fully resourced schools must be accessible to all because every child deserves an excellent, enriched education, especially those with the most needs. You also know engaged parents are critically important to student progress. We at CEC15 aim to continue the hard work of redesigning our school system to prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion in partnership with you. We are ready to work towards these goals together. We are confident you share our enthusiasm, and we endeavor to collaborate with you to make our schools the best they can be for each and every student. We look forward to meeting you and delving deeper into this work. If possible, we would like to schedule a meeting or town hall with you at your earliest convenience. Congratulations again on your new role as New York City School Chancellor. Sincerely, CEC15.
Just go first and say, I love this letter. Thank you. It feels like there's a lot there. I hope nothing's missing.
I think I think it's sufficient.
Does anybody else have any thoughts on the letter? Tia wrote, wow, me too, great job.
Yeah, really good. Thank you so much for representing us so well. I mean, I don't think I noticed the line about the partnership with school security and NYPD though before. I don't know, maybe we can
You want me to take out the police trained safety agents, just write safety agents?
Yeah, well, yeah. I'm sorry, I don't have the exact wording right in front of me.
It says I can share my screen. Hold on, let me share my screen.
Okay.
Oh gosh, which one of these things?
Do you want me to try to do the screen share so then at least you can look at your own screen, Antonio?
Sure.
All right. Let me try to
It really does represent us so well.
Oh wait, I have it. Hold on, it's fine. I think I can do it. Here.
Okay, and then Yvonne wrote, great job, very good description of RD15, and Nancy wrote, great letter. Thank you, Antonia.
So Tia, it says, we would like to see police trained safety agents and schools forge a partnership that serves the whole child. Should I just take out police trained?
Yeah.
Yeah, I initially had these listed as questions. And so when they were listed as questions, it didn't sound like an endorsement of,
Right.
but
It's my fault. I changed all those lines away from questions.
Looks
Looks great.
Anything else I should take out?
Nope, I love it.
Jared, what do you think? Do you have any comments?
No, I thought. that
Should
the
we
letter-
add something in there about our wonderful student member?
I mean, I have no objections to how it is now, because I know, I just feel like as a student member, I mean, it's, well, you know, I'm a student member on the council, but the council is obviously more than just me. And I think how it is now, it really encapsulates the diversity and broadness of our council and our community.
Okay, great.
I guess, shall we,
I'll make a motion to vote.
okay, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and go back to the agenda. So does anybody second?
I second.
That's Joe. All right. All right, so I'll just do the roll call.
Oh, Darius wrote something in the chat about maybe you could consider adding support ELL communities by improving A663 regulation. Yikes, we're not even sure which.
I think
Darius, we'll look at that at another
Yeah.
time. That sounds like that's gonna get us in the weeds here, and we
Yeah.
don't have a lot of time, but I'll definitely look into that.
This is just interpretation service for 9 languages, but we have more bilingual programs, 13, and for Italian or Polish, there is no automatic translation, no. So CCLL and also different councils support improve this regulation as soon as possible to Italian, Polish, German, and other communities not be excluded from the information and from the translation.
Do you have something in this, Antonia, specifically about translation interpretation? Because I actually do think that it would be worth it to maybe add another line. Because we had that enormous resolution that we had translated into 4 languages.
Yeah, I
I'd
mean,
love to like bring that back again.
well, we can't possibly encompass every single thing in this letter, I think.
I know. Just asking.
We could leave some topics for the town meeting that we could have with them. If
Okay.
we got the time.
Continue the vote.
Okay, hold on. Let me go back to the script. Okay, Camille Cazzaretti,
I vote yes.
Antonia Ferraro, yes. Tia Shellsteed,
Yes.
Vincent Liu is absent. Nana Poku,
Yes.
Alfred De Ingenis is absent. Joseph Alexander,
Yes.
Yvonne Banda,
Yes.
Nancy Randall,
Yes.
and we can't let the student member doesn't vote, unfortunately. Okay, so that will be sent to our new chancellor. And when we have our town hall, we will put out a message to the public about that town hall and solicit topics and questions, and certainly invite everybody to contribute to the questions that will be asked to the Chancellor. And yes, interpretation and translation can certainly be one of the topics that is discussed.
Okay, great. Let's like make a note about
Okay.
I feel like a lot is going to happen and I don't want to get lost in that.
I'll put it in the notes for the minutes.
Okay, great. So the next thing on the agenda is the review of the resolution on newly mandated assessments, MAP, IREADY, and ACADIENCE. So Tia, I'm going to hand that over to you.
Hi, okay, let me get this. Sorry, I'm gonna turn on a light. Okay. Sorry
Antonia,
about
do you
that.
want to do the screen share while she's talking?
I'm sorry. I was trying to notate
I can screen
about
share.
the
Okay, cool.
A663 regulation.
Sorry to put you on the spot like that. Okay, so Tia will screen share.
Okay, share screen. I guess that's it. Okay. All right. Do you see it?
Yes.
Okay, great. Resolution on newly mandated assessments, MAP, IREADY, and ACADIENCE. Whereas in the summer of 2021, all Department of Education schools were mandated to administer diagnostic, academic, and social emotional assessments to students from grades K through 10. Whereas while these tests may be tailored to assess student acumen, they are neither culturally responsive nor trauma informed. Whereas the test providers have acknowledged that teachers, students, and families will never see the questions or the students' answers because they are proprietary. Whereas not having access to the actual questions does not help the teacher explain to the student why they may have answered incorrectly, and we're helping students understand why they may have gotten a question wrong is pedagogically useful. Whereas the only information the parent receives from MAP testing is the student's predicted state test score along with a predicted ACT score. Whereas predictions that are made on a 6th grade student for a college entrance exam can be emotionally harmful and demoralizing. Whereas most families are unaware of these 3 new tests. Whereas parents of students taking the MAP test are led to believe that teachers can use the score to inform instruction, personalize learning, and monitor the growth of individual students. Principals and administrators can use the scores to see the performance and progress of a grade level school or the entire district. Whereas MAP reports given to teachers are impractical, demonstrating 20+ pages of incomprehensible bulleted items. Whereas, like the New York State exams, these MAP tests highlight disparities and divisions caused by many socioeconomic factors and the impact of systemically racist laws that have gone unchanged. Whereas, using teachers' time on test proctoring rather than actual teaching is not education. Whereas MAP testing is 3 times a year and can be 4-hour blocks, so up to 12 hours per year of instruction time can be lost. If a child has time and a half for testing accommodations, it's up to 18 hours. Whereas there are various alternatives to the tests, which can effectively assess student learning, such as project-based assessments. Whereas the stress of worrying about the impact of a particular score is damaging to children and creates a disincentive for learning and participation. Whereas teachers need flexibility in what and how they teach to address the trauma students have faced and continue to face during the pandemic. Whereas in 2015, the New York City Council unanimously passed a resolution calling on the DOE to amend the parents' bills Parents' Bill of Rights and Responsibilities to include information about opting out of high stakes testing and to distribute that information to parents at the start of each school year with the assurance that no consequence will come to the student, teacher, or school. Whereas 6 years later, there is no evidence that the DOE has incorporated this information into the Parents' Bill of Rights. Whereas the DOE has not created a frequently asked questions document or a parent's right to opt out of testing document regarding these particular assessments. Whereas information on opting out of assessments such as MAP, IREADY, ACADIENCE, and DESA should be clearly posted on the same webpage as the other information on testing and be made accessible in all languages. Whereas the language used in the existing New York State test FAQ document suggests that parents talk to their child's principal about opting out, but does not advise parents that they must opt out in writing. Therefore, be it resolved that CEC15 calls on the DOE to publish and distribute to every parent in the system, including charter families, a revised Parents' Bill of Rights that advises parents of their right to opt out of MAP, IREADY, ACADIENCE, DESA, and other New York State exams. And be it further resolved that the DOE will publish and distribute an FAQ sheet, a sample opt-out letter, and a fillable form that parents can use to opt out of these assessments and exams. And be it further resolved that the DOE add these Parents' Bill of Rights into the New York City Schools account so that families can conveniently opt out of testing through NICSA.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I'm going to hand the floor over to Joseph Alexander to read the teleconference protocol so that we can solicit feedback from the public. And I see that Rachel already added something in the chat. So Joe, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Tonight's meeting is taking place remotely and will include a public comment period so that we may allow for additional feedback from our families and school community members. You may leave your camera on, or for your own privacy, if you prefer, you may use audio only during the comment period and throughout the meeting. When you comment, please respect the privacy of others. Please do not include names of children or staff. Guests who make inappropriate comments will be removed from the meeting. During the public comment period, you may add comments to the chat or raise your hand to speak. Speakers will be called on one at a time and will be allowed 1 minute each for comment. We will hear as many speakers as the time allows. It is possible that not every question will be given time, so the best way to get your question answered is always to write the CEC at the email address being put into the chat right now. Thank you.
Do we want to ask Rachel to speak? She was suggesting that the letter to families, the FAQ, is what should be translated. So let's definitely add that. So that's the second to last line. The DOE will publish and distribute a fact sheet. Fillable and translate, like just kind of at the very end where it's and translated into a variety of languages. What's the right way to say that? Darius, this is where you need to come in.
Just ask them always to translate for all languages of existing bilingual program at least, which is I think 14.
Okay, translated into the 14 languages that are most commonly used.
No, this is languages of existing bilingual programs, but probably commonly. The problem is that his recognizing of ELL students is very weak. So that's why we decide to support at least languages of bilingual programs. So it's current 9 plus extra 4 or 5, which is not counted yet. So we have 14 bilingual programs.
Okay.
I don't know how to.
Can you see it, what I did there?
I think you should
Translated
take
into all
out,
14 languages offered existing bilingual program.
I think take out offered or one or the other, either offered or existing. Translated into all 14 languages. Oh, I see.
I'm reluctant to say the bilingual programs because I feel like it starts to get a little muddied. Like it's supposed to be the fact sheet for the families. So I don't have a problem saying 14 languages, but I don't.
Well, I guess it's just like if at the very least, the languages that we offer those programs in, I don't know, like, because the selection of those languages is based on the student population, wouldn't you say?
I mean, this is the argument is that the DOE translates into 9 languages and the ask is that it start becoming 14 languages.
Right. And the 14 languages.
Mimic the bilingual program.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. This is a big difference. It's a big difference because again, some communities don't have any communication and they don't know what's going on. And this is significant change because you already see that this translation need to be enlarged for more languages. Thank you.
Okay, let's leave that. Okay, Jared wanted to say something. Go ahead, Jared.
Yeah, so this resolution in general, at least in my opinion, has a very negative connotation on testing, and I understand that completely. Some of these tests, especially DESA, I very much disagree with. But at a certain point, like for the MAP test, at a certain grade, I understand at 6th grade, that's way too young to be getting feedback for standardized tests. But at a certain grade level, isn't it useful to be getting, especially in high school, to be getting feedback on how you would do on the SAT and other standardized college admissions tests?
This is not about that. This is about these mandated assessments that the DOE introduced in this year.
Yeah, but the point is, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, a lot of these are mandated, but the MAP tests, similar things have been around, assessment tests, whether you want to call them state tests or MAP tests or both. I think the state gives both of them now. They're both used to analyze student progress, and I understand the need to opt out for them. But my question is, that are we like saying that all testing in this case is bad? Because I think testing is necessary in order to determine your level of what you know.
This resolution was born from the fact that parents were told that they could not opt out of these assessments, and that is not reasonable. And I have yet to see the scores or parent reports from either of my children's schools, and my son's teacher told me that he did not see the test. He has no plans of seeing the test ever. He has no plans of seeing the result, and that these grades or whatever you want to call them are just going directly to the DOE for analysis. So that is the exact opposite of what we heard from ES Watts. And other superintendents across the city are saying that you can opt out, but for some reason, Brooklyn North is saying that you cannot. So this was more about parents' rights there are definitely problems with these assessments. And so, you know, this has been developed, the resolution has sort of like was larger, got smaller. And so now we're at a point where it's about parents' rights. And so, you know, whether people feel one way or another about tests in general, that is not what this is about. And we're not here to tell people how to think, whether, you know, tests are good or bad, but we are here to support parents' rights. And so in this particular scenario, we are not getting a clear message, and parents need to know what the rights are. So, oh, you want to take over asking the questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to support Jared in his mention. You know, I support parents' rights. I support that the resolutions at the bottom of the proposed resolution make sense to me. Parents should have the option to opt out of these tests if they want to. And other parents that want their kid to be assessed should have that right to have the child take the test. What I agree with Jared is that the top portion of the proposed resolution condemns all the tests. And I think it mixes two separate ideas. It mixes parents' rights with the idea that all of CEC15 agrees with that the tests are unfair for one reason or another. And my personal belief is it's hard to vote for something where I agree with the bottom portion, but I may disagree with the top portion of it. So, and I do think this is, when you get to the bottom and say, listen, we're all voting for parent rights, when you're voting for the whole document. And so you're saying as you vote for it, that you agree with every paragraph or phrase in it. And that's hard to do.
Is there something on this statement, Alfred, that at the beginning particularly, that you think applies to all tests and not specifically this MAP test?
Well,
Because there's been pretty wide criticism about the cost, the specific test, we're not talking about regents or anything like that.
yeah, and you know what I'll say to that is, you know, I understand this criticism, you know, in a city this large, everything is going to get criticized and by probably a lot of people. But what I'm saying is that we start by condemning the test, whether it's the MAP test, the other test. By the end, it starts off by the title has 3 tests in it. By the end, we have 5 tests listed in it. It's just, to me, that, you know, when we set up a resolution with so many clauses in it and phrases in it, sometimes while I agree with the overall idea of it, parent rights, I don't think I could see other people, including myself, not agreeing with everything. I think there is a place for standardized tests to assess your children's or a child's progress in school. So I don't think it's all bad, and I wouldn't condemn the tests. So while I do think that every parent should have that right to either take the test or not take the test, and I do think that it should be made easy for that parent to do it in a form. I don't think parents should be bullied, or there should be extra obstacles placed in the way to opt out of a test. I agree with all that. I just don't agree with everything. And it's hard to vote for a resolution that has so many different ideas in it.
Well, this is also, you know, some of us wanted the resolution to call for the abolishment of the MAP test. So it is it is a compromise already. I'm sorry, I jumped in. There's a hand up.
No, you know what, Tia, I appreciate that, because that's exactly what this looks like. It looks like it's 2 resolutions smashed into one, to me.
Do we want to call on the member of the
Yeah,
public with
I
their
do,
hand raised?
yeah, I think. Nancy, you had your hand up. I'm sorry. We stepped on your toes.
It's okay. Thank you, Joe. One of the things I wanted to say is regarding Jared's question was I think that precisely the concern is that the results of the tests cannot be used to help a student figure out where they are. The part of the problem is that this isn't an assessment where the students are getting feedback from the assessment. So that is precisely a way where it's not helping students. Whereas if you take the PSAT, then you see how you did, and then you can take the SAT and do better. But this isn't the situation with the MAP or the ACADIENCE tests. And then secondly, I wanted to say that really looking through the first part of the resolution, thinking about what Alfred just said, it really seems to me like it's very specific to the MAP, DESA, and ACADIENCE tests. And so as I read it, I read it as being very specific to these three tests that came out this year. And I don't see it relating to other tests. And that's all.
Yeah, thank you. And Rachel?
Yeah, hi. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so I wanted to comment on this as both a almost 20-year veteran educator and also as a parent in District 15, because what the student member and other CEC member are saying about tests, I think maybe we can all agree that valid assessments are really useful. And I think what this resolution is trying to say is that these are not valid assessments for a variety of reasons. And so, you know, whether or not it has to do, whether it has to do with them being either culturally unresponsive or measuring material that is not what the teacher is teaching, right? Because in order for an assessment to be valid, it has to actually be measuring the student's understanding of something that they've been taught. And that's not what these are doing. And in addition, then the results have to be usable by the teacher and also by the student. And as was mentioned before, they are not, because they're not being really made available. So as a teacher, if I give an assessment and I cannot see the questions on the assessment, and I cannot see how the student answered those questions, then I can actually never help that student with anything that that assessment is claiming to measure. And so we absolutely need tests, right? We need to assess learning. And what I like about this resolution and appreciate is that it is reminding people that the only assessments parents should be able to opt out of are the ones that are really of questionable validity. And all of these are of questionable validity. And so it's really important that parents have that right, because our kids do not deserve to be made to feel that they are stupid or that they haven't learned anything when they're taking an assessment that isn't measuring their intelligence or what they've been taught.
Thank you for that experienced perspective. Antonio?
Hey, sorry, I had to unmute. So I think the problem with the resolution is structural. I think you never defined your terms at the beginning of the resolution and took for granted that perhaps the public wouldn't know what specifically MAP, IREADY, ACADIENCE, DESA, and then other state, New York State exams are. So you confused your listeners.
Yeah, I think what happened is that this resolution was 2 pages additional than what you're seeing now. And in the beginning, there was a lot of information about this is what the MAP test is and, you know, stuff like that. And so I can see how removing that can confuse the situation.
Yeah, because you do strictly talk about the MAP test in the beginning of the resolution. And then at the end in your resolves, you throw in IREADY, Acadience, DESA, and other New York State exams. So I think you need to make some choices about what you're asking the members of the council to vote on.
Well, I mean, it's a resolution about the new assessments, but the Parents' Bill of Rights would include, we feel like the Parents' Bill of Rights would apply to other New York State exams.
Other news. Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, we're bringing this up because these new assessments have these glaring problems, which would be solved. Well, this one particular problem in terms of allowing parents to, giving
Right.
parents information would solve a problem for the other tests also. It's
I'm not
necessary
saying
for the
I'm-
other tests.
I'm not disagreeing. What
Yeah.
I'm just giving some constructive feedback about writing a resolution, and the problem that we have in talking about all education issues is the endless acronyms for things and defining our terms so that everybody understands, so that everybody's on the same page, so that we know what we're talking about.
I mean, the first paragraph does say,
But does it
These
explain
are
IREADY and Acadience?
those are included in these. The IREADY and Acadience are multi-purpose. They're used for instruction, but they also
I know,
are
but what I'm saying is
the
you never explained
tests.
at the beginning of this resolution what you never defined those terms in the beginning so that people know what it is.
That should be a
You only
colon.
talk about MAP. You didn't talk about DESA. You didn't talk about Acadience and IREADY. So you just
They're
can't
newly mandated assessments.
right, but you can't assume that everybody knows what that means, that everybody knows what that is.
I mean, I would be willing to chop this down even further and remove some of the details about MAP specifically, because I think what's happening here is there's like a lot of talk about MAP test, and
I think you just need a sentence in the beginning that says MAP, IREADY, Acadience, DESA are blank.
Are newly mandated assessments.
Right. You need that sentence in there so that people
Well,
know
it's in the title.
it's also like in the summer of 21, all Department of Ed schools were mandated to administer diagnostic I mean, we could just list the names right there. If that's,
Again. Okay, yeah.
just list them again.
Yeah.
So let's Alfred, do you mind if we let Jody speak? And then because we're kind of out of order here, we were going to be doing the public first.
Why isn't it letting me type anymore?
I'm not sure what's happening.
Oh, here we
Jody,
go.
why don't you go ahead?
Hi, thank you. My name is Jody Dresner Alprin, and I am a parent of 2 New York City public school kids. And I just want to come and speak in favor of this resolution. I understand, people have different theories about assessments. And as I believe Rachel was saying earlier, I think everybody can agree that assessments are good and needed. But I think it's important for CEC15 at this moment to highlight and understand the difference between the professionalism of our teachers and the assessments that they create and that they use with our kids and have used always with our kids, and stand up in support of them and say, we want you to be able to do your job in the classroom. We believe in you. We believe in your training. We believe in your professionalism. And we know that you have always done beginning of the year and interim assessment throughout. And we understand as a council that implementing these particular newly mandated 3 times a year, poorly crafted, technological problem inundated, culturally irresponsive tests strips you not only of your ability to rely on your own training, your own assessments, your knowledge of your classroom, which is of course paramount above all else, but it also takes you away from your students for hours and hours on end in a time that we know that classroom time is so precious, right? Like we just today hit over 80% attendance in schools for the first time since like the beginning of December. Kids are out, teachers are out, classes are disrupted. And if the council comes together and says, these particular assessments, we get it. The money is poorly spent. We could have spent that money on masks for you, on more tests, on masks for the kids. We could have literally spent it on anything else, and it would probably have been better than this. We believe in you, teachers. We believe in what you do and your craft and your professionalism in the classroom. And we don't think this is a good use of your time. Not once a year, not twice a year, but 3 times a year on top of the mandated 3 through 8 tests, on top of Regents tests, if those get, implemented at the end of the year, on top of AP tests. Like this is an astronomical amount of time. People are up in arms about how much time kids are losing outside of the classroom. And then if you don't speak up and you don't support this resolution, you're saying, actually, we're fine with the city stealing more of that time and spending millions and millions of dollars to do it away from our kids and teachers. So I just want to say, as a District 15 parent, I really think it's important that you pass this resolution. I understand people have different feelings about the state test. I'll happily come on and argue with you about that any other time, but these are bad. The teachers hate them. The administrators hate them. The administrators are running close contact tracing now because the Situation Room isn't doing it anymore. Nobody has time for this. And the only thing it's doing is keeping our teachers from actually engaging with our students. And it is CEC's 15 job to pass this resolution and say, we're not okay with that. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you very much for that. Let's move to Alfred, then we need to tie up this resolution for the night, I think. So we have a lot to do.
Just wanted to say, I heard what Jody said, and I appreciate that. But at the end of the day, even though the top of the paragraphs and the clauses on the top condemn the test, that's not what the resolution at the bottom says. It just opts us. It just allows parents to opt out. If the ultimate goal is that enough parents opt out where they stop administrating the tests, then I guess that's one way of doing it. But we start off one way and we finish. We start off condemning a test and then we ask for something else at the end. That's my only issue with the resolution. It's just, again, it just feels like 2 resolutions smashed into one. And at the end, we're asking for parents' rights or supporting parent rights, but that's not what we're saying at the top of the resolution. So that's my only point.
Yeah, I think that's fair feedback. I do. I mean, I'm definitely in line with what Jody said as a belief system, but I think I can agree with Alfred on that point. That
I mean, what we're saying is, at the very least, we think this is a bad use of money and time, so parents should be able to opt out, and parents should know that they should be able to opt out.
Yeah.
That's, I just wanted to say that I just, this highlighted whereas I think should actually be in the resolved part. I just realized, so hope everybody's okay with me moving that later. You know what I mean? Because it's a recommendation.
Just move it.
Okay, go ahead and do it. Okay.
Tia, I added DESA to the top of the resolution. I don't know if that was.
That makes sense. They should, because again, as Alfred pointed out, what we conclude with is this more general, information for parents. So that makes sense. maybe here.
You know, in the bottom of page 1, there's the, whereas like the New York State exams, these map tests highlight disparities and divisions. I mean, Alfred, if it makes you feel more comfortable, we could just take out like the New York State exams.
That would make me feel more comfortable.
From where?
The first page, last whereas. I just want to say it's still a fact, even if we take it out.
Right. I mean, it sort of illustrates why there's a need for a parent's bill of rights, you know, as an example of the lack of information for parents in general. But I'm happy to be diplomatic.
I'm not seeing it. Where is this other?
The bottom of page 1, the
Uh-huh.
last, about the whereas.
It's also, that language is also in the resolve.
Yeah, you have the New York State tests and the resolve, the first.
Well,
resolve.
it's not a matter of removing New York State tests from the resolution at all, because again, you know,
Well, that is just a reference.
Bill of
to
Rights
The New York
is-
State test has a fact.
Yeah.
So we need that. We have to
Right.
keep that.
what she's saying is
Oh,
that
the next line. Oh, okay. The top of page 3. And other New York State. In that very first resolve.
sorry, Antonio, I was wrong. It was I didn't realize it was 3 pages. It was the bottom of page 2.
Yeah, I see it now.
Okay, and then what are you talking about, Camille?
Oh, okay. Actually, I think we do need to leave that there. That's part of, that would be part of the facts document.
Yeah,
I
I
was
think
talking
it's
about the third from, no, the 4th from the bottom. It's that top one right there where it says, nope, I'm back.
the top of what?
Right there. Therefore be it resolved that CEC calls on the DOE. And so it ends with other New York State exams, but it says other New York State exams as a reference to the Parent Bill of Rights. So that should stay. We don't
Yes.
want to have like 2 parents' Bill of Rights. We just want one. We just
Exactly.
want these mandated assessments to be part of the allowable opt-out.
Yeah.
Or for the DOE to say that they are allowable to opt out.
Yeah, I mean, they said they were going to do it about the New York State exams. They didn't do it. So that's a
Alfred,
good.
do you have anything else you want to modify? Or Antonia, are you feeling better about that entry in line 1?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so
Okay.
yeah.
So go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to make a motion to vote.
Great. I second.
Okay. Antonia, you want me to?
Yeah,
call the
I'll
names?
read it. I'll read it. Camille,
I agree.
Antonia, yes. Tia,
Yes.
Nana,
Yes.
Alfred,
Yes.
Joseph,
Yes.
Yvonne,
Yes.
and Nancy.
Yes.
The resolution passes.
Okay, great. So thank you, everybody. That was a very good discussion, debate, and thank you, members of the public, for all of your honest and thoughtful feedback. Okay, so the next resolution, I am going to hand the floor over to Yvonne to read that one.
Thank you. The resolution in our agenda is number 5 and B. CEC15 resolution to support the D15 community in restorative practices, anti-bias education, and collaborative community engagement practices. Whereas the New York City Department of Education explicitly emphasized accountability in its guidance to foster ongoing dialogue and action about race and equity. As the largest school system in the country, we are accountable to addressing the ways in which our institution perpetuates racism and inequities. Accountability is reflecting understanding biases, prioritizing learning, and educating oneself. Engaging in conversations with young people, community members, family, and colleagues about race, racism, and racial violence, listening and unpacking the root causes of our current state, and most importantly, taking action against racial injustice. In the absence of this individual and collective commitment to our shared humanity, learning, and action, we stand to replicate the inequalities that are harming our Black students, families, employees, and communities, and ultimately us all. Whereas District 15 serves students from diverse socioeconomic, racial, linguistic, cultural, and religious backgrounds, and has made a collaborative commitment to promoting diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism. And this commitment is only meaningful when all members of our schools, communities are involved and engaged in the processes of change, where the most historically underrepresented voices are prioritized and uplifted. Whereas the anti-racist work necessary to disintegrate our schools and bring communities together requires an acknowledgement that prior and existing policies have perpetuated unequal outcomes for Black and Brown students. Whereas the work to ensure that our schools become equitable, culturally sustaining spaces for all children, families, and educators requires institutional support, including comprehensive, intentional, proactive, not reactive practices aligned with the 5 R's of real integration: race and enrollment, resources, relationships, restorative justice, and practices, and representation. Whereas an authentic shift in policies and culture will be ongoing by definition, and like all growth will entail discomfort, particularly for those individuals whose comfort has been previously centered at the expense of others. Whereas in seeking equity for all of our students and families, leaders, and the school at the school level and within our PAs and PTAs have taken first steps in allowing for greater community building through sharing of information, resources, and collaborative practices, intentionally intended to remove the inequitable barriers that exist and have created additional pathways for adult education. Whereas school communities in District 15 are seeking greater support from the Department of Education to prioritize the desegregation of our schools, and that cannot happen effectively without every leader in the Department of Education prepared to implement the New York State Cultural Responsive Sustaining Education, CRSE, framework, which says as follows: helps educators create a student-centered learning environment that affirm racial, linguistic, and cultural identities, develop student abilities to connect across lines of difference, elevate historically marginalized voices, and empower students as agents of social change, grounded in a vision of an education system that creates students who experience academic success, students who are social, political conscious and social cultural responsive, and students who have a critical lens through which they challenge inequality systems of access, power, and privilege. Whereas District 15 recognizes the right of all of our community members to be respected and affirmed in their humanity, at the same time recognizing that systems are designed to achieve the results they get. And so when harm occurs, we must examine the systemic features that enable the harm to occur. Whereas when members of our community have been harmed, whether intentionally or not, we must all rally around the harmed, especially a harmed child, creating a balance through restorative practices, where the harm is not villainized or further traumatized by processes intended to create accountability. Whereas we must distinguish between harm that threatens someone's safety to verbal or physical injury to person or object, including oppressive behaviors, violence, manipulation, lies, or bullying and discomfort, which although might feel unpleasant at the time, is often necessary for growth and does not threaten someone's safety. Whereas adults in the school communities must be held accountable for their actions, reactions, words, including emotional violence, and must model the same willingness to participate in healing processes with integrity and vulnerability that they demand from students who perpetrate harm within their school communities. Therefore, be it resolved that a D15 restorative practices team will be formed through a collaboration with CEC15, the District 15 office, and the D15 President's Council that will, as follows, work in collaboration with the DEI subcommittee of the DLT, will exist within the District 15 school community to help mediate conflicts that might arise and directly support those harmed, whose members will include a diverse group of representatives from the District 15 community, including representatives from the most marginalized communities in the district. With collective skills and expertise, will use practices that call people in while prioritizing accountability over comfort. We'll work with anyone from the D15 school community to have their voice heard confidentially around repair and healing, with protection from any retaliation from supervisors or children, teachers, or school leaders, and where a commitment to support the person or people who have been harmed exists in various forms. Be it resolved that this D15 restorative practices team will work with the impacted parties in, number one, recognizing and acknowledging the harm done. Number two, take responsibility for the harm. Three, taking action to repair the harm. And number four, taking an action to prevent the recurrence of the harm. Be it resolved that where the restorative practices team has exhausted all options, the district will intervene with a mediation process that includes all the stakeholders guided by an outside BIPOC-led or LGBTQ+-led organization that specializes in intersectionality in addressing harm and distinguishing harm from discomfort, chosen by the impacted community where the process will be meaningful and clearly defined in terms of goals and timeline. Be it resolved that equity teams in D15 and the DLT DEI committee members work with the new restorative practice team on district-based concerns as well as school-based concerns. Since we must recognize that what benefits one of our schools communities might harm others, and that what benefits some in a given school community might harm others within the same school. Be it resolved that all D15 schools will create dedicated spaces for student expression, EI advisory periods, to center student voice in an intentional way and use human rights-centered curriculum to guide conversations. Be it resolved that the Department of Education will require regular, ongoing anti-bias, anti-racism, ABAR, education workshops, and offer access to readings, videos, community-led teach-ins, and other resources, including individual mentors to promote greater understanding of systemic inequities and how they intersect with individual strengths and struggles. To allow systemic inequities and how they intersect with individual strengths and struggles, to allow for our communities to grow together in our humanity and model lifelong learning for our children. And where these resources are available not only to DOE staff, but to families in their home languages. Be a result that through a small listening sessions, District 15 administrators will partner authentically with their schools, DEI committee, students, families, and educators to generate, pilot, codify, and continue to refine collaborative community engagement practices that are promoted throughout District 15, especially in co-located schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan. Before I open it up to CEC, let's pause and see if community members have comments or questions on this. Please raise your hand. Yes, Rachel.
Hi again.
Hi.
I want to say thank you as someone from the school community that was impacted by harm. I think that inspired this resolution. And what is really important about this is not necessarily the specifics of what is proposed, but the naming of the responsibility of adults to engage in the same kinds of restorative conversations that we ask our children to engage in. When a child does something that harms another child, we love to talk about restorative practices. And there's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't expect our administrators and teachers like myself to engage in the same kinds of practices of taking ownership and being held accountable so that our communities can heal. And I would say that we're now 7 or 8 months, 7 months past what happened at my child's school, and there still has not been healing. And had this, what is in this resolution, been in place, I believe that, or I hope that that wouldn't be the case. So I support the resolution.
Thank you for that. Let us move on to CEC questions, comments. I know that's months of writing that we just listened to. So, Alfred, I see you're first.
Thank you again. So I just have a ton of questions about the logistics of this, of the team. Who selects the people on the team? How many people are on the team? When you say diverse group, who decides that? Where do they meet? When do they meet? I mean, there's a lot of just questions and some of the wording in it about their voices to be heard confidentially and I'm not sure. I'm assuming that means that there's going to be some sort of I don't know if that then becomes that confidential complaint or action becomes something that's then shared in public. And I'm not really sure how any of this really works, especially with the team. And that's how long is the team in effect? Is it 1 year, 2 years, or any of that stuff? Isn't this, I feel like the team is replacing the responsibility of CEC15.
So it wasn't really meant to replace any of our advocacy at all. Really what's happening here is that, and we're not going to get into the logistics of how. It's really a question of this is something that is obviously needed by this community, and all of the mechanisms that are in place right now, like with the DEI teams at each school, with the anti-bias training, like if all things could be equal, we would be in a much better place right now, but they're not. And so what we've seen is that some schools are doing extraordinary work in these areas and really creating inclusive environments for all of the school community members, and others are not doing as great a job. And in cases where harm is being caused, we do not want the members of our community who are being put in these situations to feel like there is no level of support for them. And as far as the confidentiality goes, if a situation happens with a student and the school is under an obligation to report many things, but if things are happening with parents or with teachers, staff, like it's a completely different situation. And I think that as far as the confidentiality goes, if a family member wants to have a conversation with a team that is different than, say, the District 15 office and different from the access that they have at their own school, CEC15 isn't necessarily the place that they would go either. I think like what we're looking for is a group that is not necessarily connected directly with any of these entities, but that can function as support for situations where support is not there, like where we would typically think it should be. And so, yeah, we should not pretend like support exists in every single space for every single person. And so, we know that at PS 295 and at their co-located school 443, there was a terrible thing that happened, and many of the school community are still feeling that they have been unheard and silenced. And as Rachel was saying, it's many, many months later, and people really do not feel like the steps that have been made are enough or fast enough. And so if there was another team that could, support the students and the family members and the other members of the school community who really felt like this great injustice was done, which it was, things would just be playing out a lot differently. And so whatever the logistics are of that, however many members of this team there are going to be, what their skill set are, I mean, that's just a next step. The point of this resolution is to say that we're doing a lot of really great work in this district. It's very deep, it's very emotional. And if we want to come together as a people, respecting all of the members of our community, giving voice to the marginalized voices and historically underrepresented, then we need more support. So this is another level of support. And if it has to be funded, we'll find the money. If it's going to be volunteer, we'll find the volunteers. But this is like a first step. It isn't like a whole 20-page document of what this is supposed to look like.
Yeah, I'm sure that would be a manual. When this starts to be codified, we'll have a lot of time for logistics. Antonia?
Yeah, Camille, has the district office implemented any aspect of this already?
I mean, there are some things that are currently available. And in our ad hoc diversity committee meeting, we're talking more deeply about this and trying to figure out, because now there's so many different diversity teams that are being formed, the Equity Congress, the DLT, DEI team, each school has their diversity team, but the principals come together once a month. But there still feels like there's a lot of disconnect. And so we're going to work on a one-pager to detail what each of these groups is meant to be doing, so that at least we can all, sort of as a district, come together with this high-level description of what each of these teams are doing. And then we can figure out how the restorative justice team would either be born from some of those teams, or maybe they're just completely independent entirely. So that's like still in the works.
Thank you. Nana?
Yeah, so I think Camille just mentioned a lot of the things that I was going to say. So just to kind of make a quick note on our part, I think you made the quick comment about how this came about. So there's been various pockets in terms of all these things going on, and I think this resolution is just the first step. In other step, just kind of try to tighten everything and bring everything together as sort of a common goal. It's definitely not something, just a starting point, right? And the way that I see it is that there's been a lot of discussions where we know that there's stuff going on from maybe Secretary of Scope's office and stuff like that. But then people have not been talking to each other to try to come together for a common cause. So we're hoping that this is pretty much going to be sort of the starting point where we can start putting those ideas on paper, where everybody's going to be held accountable, right? From the district office to the schools that are mandated now to have a diversity committee, to us that are making sure that we hold ourselves accountable as CEC15 members, and we also going out there and do the outreach where we can be able to connect the pieces. This has been a long time coming, and thanks for Eva for putting this together. But I think that this is not going to be the only discussion. This is the first of many discussions that we're going to have regarding how we're going to all come together as a community to make sure that we all have one common goal. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you for that. All right. Any other comments or feedback? before we?
I just want to give some credit to people on this call who helped who I've had numerous conversations with, and I really appreciate her input. Someone want to make a motion to vote?
I'll make a motion to vote.
I'll second. Joe.
Is that Ivan or? Okay, Camille, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Antonia, yes. Tia?
Yes.
Nana?
Yes.
Alfred?
I'm going to abstain on this one. This is the first time I'm seeing this resolution. It's too vague. It's just got too many question marks in it. So sorry.
Joe?
Yes.
Yvonne Bonda?
Yes.
And Nancy?
Yes.
Okay. You have, the resolution passes.
So that's 7 and 1 abstention, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
To the members of the public, I'm sorry we're having a little bit of delay here and there. It's because we don't have an administrative assistant and we are doing the job of 3 people rather than 2. Okay, so the next resolution is a resolution in support of virtual meetings in open meetings law. So this is actually a resolution that we passed in August. And the original resolution, could somebody screen share this because it's a lot easier to understand when you see the screen share. It's really only a couple of things that have been added to this resolution. So the items in red are what is additional. The items in black those were already approved from the last resolution. So we're basically saying that the first red part is updating what's current. So that's not really anything at all. And then the second little red part, which is a little further down, Nancy suggested adding another category to people who are benefiting from these virtual meetings. And then in the very last line, it's just saying that we request a permanent change to the open meeting clause so that we could continue having virtual meetings. Just in the interest of following the rules, could I have a volunteer to read this aloud? I'm sorry, I'm still like coughing if I talk too much, so I'm just going to take a break from talking. Joe, would you be able to read it? Do you mind?
Sure thing.
Great. Thank you.
Sure. Resolution in support of virtual meetings and open meetings law. Whereas the open meetings law that requires citywide community education councils, school leadership teams, and district leadership teams to hold in-person meetings, whereas CCECs, SLTs, DLTs are part of New York City public school governance structure intended to enable parents to not only observe important decision-making processes at the school and district levels, but also to provide comments and feedback on issues that are important to students and families. This is a new one. Whereas permitted under Executive Order 202.1, the extended under that law, these bodies have held public meetings remotely since mid-March of 2020. Whereas attendance has increased dramatically in many meetings since they were made remote, whereas meetings are easier to attend remotely for parents with younger children, parents of children with disabilities, and single parents because of the relief from childcare, transportation, and specialized care, representation of these vulnerable groups becomes more likely in a virtual setting. Whereas more families are able to engage in school governance through virtual access since the NYC Department of Education has provided free internet-enabled devices to families who need them. Whereas remote meetings allow disability-related reasonable accommodations such as closed captioning and the chat function for communication for individuals with disabilities to participate in the meeting or program. Whereas remote meetings have allowed for more accommodations for those families requiring translation and interpretation services in order to support their inclusion and discussion related to our communities. Whereas the ease with which remote meetings can be recorded and disseminated throughout the community has increased the inclusion and feedback of families whose employment and other responsibilities might have been prevented in their in-person involvement before. Whereas transparency in the decision-making of school communities is more important than ever in building confidence in the safety of our schools and eliminating remote access to planning meetings erodes that confidence. Whereas the NYC Department of Education, in its effort to include and empower more parents, support this request. Therefore, be it resolved that CEC15 request a permanent change to the open meeting law, allowing CECs, SLTs, and DLTs the option to continue meeting virtually, which would greatly enhance their ability to engage with community members and provide greater transparency and public feedback. So we are at the point for public comments or questions on this resolution being made permanent, or a resolution to make it permanent, rather. Any comments? I'll move it to CEC members to ask questions or comments. Nancy?
Thank you, Joe. I have a question for the CEC members who have been on the CEC since before we went remote. I started attending meetings when they were remote, so I have no idea what you guys experienced beforehand. And I just am wondering what, today we have a handful of people here who are not CEC members, and of course the calendar meetings, we have many more. So I just wonder how many people would come to meetings before it was remote.
To be honest with you, it really depended on what the topic was. If it was like, a rezoning meeting, you'd have hundreds of people. If it was like the Chancellor's town hall, it was hundreds of people. But if it was just, a business meeting like this, you wouldn't get too many people. It really varied.
I think Antonia is totally right. Like the size that we are right now used to be the size of our regular business meeting, maybe even less. And as far as the audience, depending on what the topic was, I mean, we had a middle school forum once. There were definitely maybe even 300 people in that auditorium. It was totally packed. Our zoning meetings were standing room only at one point. So, and I remember a really great meeting. We had a joint meeting with the President's Council when School Construction Authority was there, also like totally packed auditorium. And this resolution is not saying that we should just do fully remote. It's just saying that we should have the option if we want to do it. And so like when we were in person during the zoning meetings, we did have like what could be in Zoom breakout room. Like we did do a lot of community work in person, which was really nice to be together and sort of like talk to people and be able to sit next to them. And so I don't think that these Zoom meetings are, I hope they're not just like the ultimate future. In-person meetings were really like chaotic in terms of the before and after trying to set everything up. So hours and hours and hours of planning. And then never quite knowing if the tech was going to work when we got there. So there's a lot of advantages to the Zoom. And I think that we really just have to hold on to it for as long as we can. And then, these meetings are being recorded now. So we have a YouTube channel. We never had that before. That's great. People don't have to come to this space. They could watch the videos whenever they want in their own time. And like that alone is really invaluable.
Yeah, I'm more skeptical and a little bit torn. I will probably end up supporting this resolution because the reality is that when we go back in person, we're going to have to figure out how to make hybrid meetings work. And there really is no technological way to make hybrid meetings really work. And I don't see the DOE purchasing the technology, if it even exists, to make that work well for us. We would need like multiple cameras, and I don't know how to do it. I don't know personally how to do it. And it ultimately comes down to the members of the CEC to figure out how to make a hybrid meeting work. And there is sort of an expectation on the part of the public to now be able to attend everything virtually in some fashion. However, not everybody has access to high-speed internet. Despite what we think, not every building in every single neighborhood has access to this. So is it really an open meeting? They could, when we were in person, anyone could literally walk in the door and sit and have a seat. On Zoom, I'm not convinced that literally everyone can have a seat at the table. And I'm also a little bit concerned because we're humans, we're mammals. We kind of like to be like around each other and in person. And I am concerned that we are losing our engagement in the issues and our engagement with each other and our ability to sort of like relate to each other. I had a terrible time writing that letter to Chancellor Banks because I realized I don't know what any of you do for a living because we've never sat down and had a coffee or a beer or anything. And there were those intangible moments before meetings and after meetings where people would just mix. And maybe they would have a conversation on the way home from a meeting, and you would learn something about somebody that doesn't happen on an agenda in a Zoom meeting. So I am very torn and not 100% like, yes, it's very easy to just be on Zoom and make it happen, but I miss our in-person meetings. That's my spiel.
Oops, I was muted. Nana?
Yeah, thanks, Joseph. So I just want to mention, when you, with this resolution, I'm a bit torn as well. Just because when we started out during the summer, I remember our first meeting, after the second meeting, the then Governor Cuomo just mandated that all state officials just meet in person. And I realized that there was a bit of scrambling where people were given the option either to be remote or to be in person, and it just didn't go well just because somebody said they were going to show up and they did not. And the next, I remember, like, Camille was a bit frustrated with in a few situations where we're expecting somebody that didn't show up and we saw them online or being remote, right? So those are the complications that it creates, because anytime there's an option, human beings, as we default to the path of less resistance, right? Zoom is convenient. You can be in a little corner and just log on. So, instead of me just coming in person, if I say I'm going to come in person, 20 minutes later, I can say, hey, you know what? I'm just going to log on Zoom. It just messes up the mood of the meeting, and sometimes the planning of the meeting itself, because you never know who's going to show up in the live session or who's going to show up remotely. That's why I'm a bit torn, because when it's mandated that everybody shows up in person, there's a level of effort that goes into it, making sure everybody shows up. And the only challenge is that when we try to do it well, it's kind of create some challenges. But we do have better meetings in person as well, just because there's more of a collaboration before and after the meeting. And there's more of, like Antonia said, that sort of bond that takes place. I had the opportunity to enjoy 2 of those, and I think it was great. I would like really to just default to whatever the state mandate is going to be, and maybe ahead of time, if it's going to be in person, we shouldn't give people the option of either being remote, because it makes the meeting very cumbersome. That's why I'm torn with this resolution.
Thank you. Tia?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to Nancy's question. Yeah, so the attendance really varied, but I think in general, for just a regular meeting that is about an exciting topic, I think that we have regularly had more people than the in-person less exciting meetings had. So I would just say that I think that attendance, you know, across the board has been higher. I mean, just the average, but that's totally anecdotal. And then in terms of, I just want to remind everyone that this is a resolution to allow us to have the ability to be remote, not a resolution to say that all of our meetings should be remote, because I actually had brought up before that I think we should have some meetings in person, you know, obviously not, you know, in the peak of Omicron, but when case numbers get back down lower, it would be nice to occasionally have in-person meetings, maybe depending on the topic, and because Antonia's right that, you know, for whatever reason, I mean, there are access issues with being in person too. Some people, you know, it's easier, you know, each way is easier for some people. So I think to be able to provide access to both types of people would be great.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yvonne?
Yes, I just wanted to add a little bit that my first 2 meetings were in person when I started.
Yeah.
And then everything shut down. So that was it. I didn't have. I even asked when I saw Antonia in this July, August, did we meet in person? I couldn't remember that we met in person. And I think also Stephen from FACE, that was the first time that I met him was in July. And so it's a very different, I think 2 other things. Also, last meeting, we were talking about the schools, and Tia was describing how this door could help the students go from one place of the building to where the kids have recess, instead of walking in the side where there's a construction site right across the street. You know, so these are the things that sometimes I think personally I miss, you know, because I want to see that playground. I want to see that possibility of that door. I know there's some restrictions. If you rent a house, you're not gonna make a whole door there because you're renting a place. But you know, those are the things that help us understand our communities and our community needs. The other thing is also that in my school where my son is, specifically culturally has also helped. There's a lot of women that don't go to these public meetings. There are some fathers that don't go to certain meetings in education. Sometimes it's viewed in certain cultures just a part of a woman's work. and the Zoom has provide that venue for more people to attend these meetings, to participate, and sometimes even to meet for the first time a principal, a parent coordinator, you know, and you can see in these meetings, I mean, how happy some people are, like, oh my God, there's the principal for the first time, you know. So this pandemic, the technology has provided us with those things. But I think I think we should keep this option. We should push for this option, because in certain instances has helped different groups of our community in our district. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I'll chime in as well, in that I am somebody who professionally has kind of been left out of the opportunity to do teleservices, just based on what I do. It doesn't work. And so I've sort of had to do the opposite, which is like go out into the homes. I spend a lot of time in NYCHA houses where, you know, there are internet connectivity issues as well, you know, working with little kids, and that, you know, we're trying to reach these caregivers for these meetings. And, you know, I don't see the issue in the patient population that I work with struggling with their caregivers engaging through teleservices as much as being out till 10 o'clock on a school night and engaging in a meeting personally. I just don't, I don't think that's realistic, that those are the same level of barrier for the families we work with. So I definitely would support the remote option, which I never thought in a million years that I would, but I do.
Sarah, do you want to say something? How do you feel about the remote meeting? I mean, you've never really attended an in-person meeting either, but do you think that this has worked out better for you? Maybe I shouldn't have put him on the spot. Okay, why don't we go ahead and vote? You probably step away for a minute. Or does anybody want to make a motion to vote?
I'll make a motion.
I second.
Nancy?
Let's see. All right, Camille?
I vote yes.
Antonia, I vote yes. Tia?
Yes.
Nana?
I'm gonna abstain.
Abstain. Alfred?
I'm gonna vote yes.
Joseph?
I vote yes.
Yvonne?
Yes.
And Nancy?
Yes.
Okay. The resolution passes with one abstention.
Okay, so 7 yes, 1 abstention. Okay. And then the next resolution, this is a little bit self-serving. I hate to do this kind of thing, but it has come up and it really just feels like it needs to happen. So resolution to support amendments to the CCEC member reimbursement list. The very short story is that we are very limited in the things that we can get reimbursed for. We don't have a very large expense budget for our member reimbursements. But every now and then, we need to leave New York City to do some education work. For example, one time a bunch of us went to go see the Senator Shelley Mayer, who is the education chair, went to see her in her office up north, drove got reimbursed for only part of the trip because we can't leave the city limits apparently and get reimbursed for that. So, and then another time that we went to Albany, paid a few $100s for the tickets, and then later found out that we would not get reimbursed. So these are all totally legitimate expenses. They should be reimbursed. Other elected officials are allowed to make this type of travel-related expenses get reimbursed. And so it's just sort of parity in what is allowable. It certainly would just only be education related for CEC work. And that's what it is. It's just like very short. I can read it aloud. Whereas the New York State Education Law 2590C 1C states that members shall not be paid a salary or stipend, but shall be reimbursed for all actual and necessary expenses directly related to the duties and responsibilities of the community council. Whereas reasonable related reimbursement allowances are necessary for public officers serving without compensation to be supported in the work that they do on the council, allowing for more time to dedicate to their role and empower council members to own the work and the responsibility of the job they have been elected to do. Whereas financial limits for each council member are capped at a monthly and annual total and cannot exceed that dollar amount. Whereas CCEC member reimbursements do not allow for travel expenditures beyond New York City limits. Whereas CCEC members have traveled to Albany and other destinations outside New York City for education-related issues and conferences at their own expense. Whereas building relationships with state elected officials is important in elevating the unique needs of students in New York City, and this often necessitates meetings in Albany. Whereas many opportunities exist outside New York City for enhancing the work of council members, such as conferences, forums, and meetings. Therefore, be it resolved that the Department of Education should include education-related out-of-town travel expenses as eligible CCEC member reimbursements. Thoughts? Thoughts? Any comments from the public? Okay, so if nobody has any questions, I would like to make a motion to vote.
Second.
Thank you, Nancy.
All right, Camille,
Vote yes.
Antonia, I vote yes. Tia,
Yes.
Nana,
Yes.
Alfred,
Yes.
Joseph,
Yes.
Yvonne,
Yes.
and Nancy.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes unanimously.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And okay.
And then you've just got the treasurer's report.
Yeah, Alfred, you, we have to give you an update since you're the treasurer, and I don't think you know what happened here.
I
But
don't.
basically, the SGO, our oh my God, I forgot. What's SGO stand for, Steve?
Governmental.
Senior Grants Officer, I'm sorry. Yes, okay, how did I forget that? So she was entering the information into the DOE system, and because we voted to allocate $10,000 from the budget for the administrative assistant, we just needed to rework the details of the resolution. So all of the actual information is exactly the same. Everything that we voted on, exactly the same. The layout is a little bit different. So just wanted to let everybody know that that had happened. And Steve, you said we do not have to vote on this? It was really just like a update. Is that accurate?
Yeah, because I mean, you just made the lines what they were from the conversation last time, right?
Exactly.
And you already
just like
you
moved the
voted on it.
document around, and Could somebody screen share that so we can
Yeah,
look
you're
at
just
it?
showing what the line, how much money is on each line right now. So that's just the treasurer's update.
Well, I mean, we haven't spent any money to date. So there's no, nothing to actually report on that so far, but so this is what the new resolution looks like. Same thing, just the lines are moved around a little bit where the $10,000 is separated. Just so everybody knows. Okay. And then Steve, what is the date, the final date that we're allowed to modify this budget? Would that get posted yet?
I don't think so. It's usually start of March. I'll find out tomorrow. Let me ask.
Okay, great.
I haven't seen
So
them,
we
but
still have some time to
Yes.
move things around if we need to.
100%.
Great, thank you. And okay, Antonia, do you want to do the update of hiring of the administrative assistant? You're muted.
Sorry about that. We had found somebody and they found another job. That's it in a nutshell. You know, maybe we made a mistake by trying to interview people before Christmas. And the intervening weeks, the DOE didn't reach out to her. I understand that the vetting process can take up to 90 days, and I don't know if that's realistic for anybody to wait that long to hear back about a job. In the past, I don't think our other AAs had to wait 90 days. It seemed to happen a bit faster. I don't know if I can anticipate that CEC AAs will be prioritized. The vetting of them will be prioritized any differently the next time around. I don't have any optimism. I have no reason to be optimistic that we're going to find an AA, to be honest with you. I don't. It feels like the definition of insanity.
Hey, she's
Doing
not
the
going to
same
talk
thing.
anymore. We are going to find an administrative assistant. We have an amazing team that is working on this. We have the DOE keeps posting the
I know.
what's this thing called?
The job
The offer. And we're going to be able to pay somebody a more reasonable living
Yes.
wage with the $10,000 that we put aside. And I am very hopeful that we are going to find an administrative assistant. And I'm going to go on the record that we are going to have somebody by March 31st. Did you hear that, Steve?
Make any promises, Camille. We've interviewed, we've made like, do you know how many people we've interviewed? We've been interviewing people since last March.
There's a lot of great people out there, and we're going to find another one.
I looked on the thing. How many hours a week was it?
It's a typical.
It's 35
Yeah.
hours.
Yeah.
35. Okay.
Yeah. It's a regular
Plus
9 to 5
benefits.
Yes, health benefits. Yes,
There's a lot of upward mobility.
there is. There is. But there's a lot of people hiring. And if these candidates have to wait an entire month or more to hear from a prospective employer, they're not going to take the job.
Hmm.
Okay, so that's the story. That's the update. We lost a great candidate. It's unfortunate, and we're back to the drawing board. But the good news is that the job posting is closing tomorrow for the 1,000th time that it's been posted. So we should be getting some resumes in the next week or so. And hopefully our hiring team has not exhausted their energies. Steve said most likely Friday. So we'll spend the whole weekend reading resumes again. Good times.
Mhm.
All right. So does anybody have anything they want to share before we adjourn? Okay, so then I'll just say I appreciate you all so much. Thank you for being here. It is 8:44 and look forward to seeing you all on Tuesday at our calendar meeting.
Good night,
Have a
everybody.
lovely
Thank you.
evening.
Good
night.
night.
Good night, everybody.